Alright guys, moving on again. Alright, we're on Genesis chapter 32 now. We just finished 31. We're going to do all of chapter 32 this video. Alright, it's where Jacob prepares to meet Esau. Okay, without further ado, grab your Bibles, follow along. I'm on the NIV version. If you don't have a Bible, no worries, I'll read out the verses anyway. Alright, let's start off with a quick prayer. Father, I pray as we read your word that you sanctify us with your truth and pour it all over us. Your word is truth. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, Genesis chapter 32, verse 1. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim. Right, so as Jacob re-enters the promised land, right, angels meet him and he names the place Mahanaim, which means two camps. Alright. 20 years earlier, right, angels appeared when Jacob left the land. Now they appear again when he returns. Right, this isn't just a random coincidence, right? The message is simple, right? You were guarded when you left, you are guarded as you return. Right? Again, the word Mahanaim, right, means two camps, right? Jacob's camp and God's camp. Right? He sees that he's not alone. Right? Before Esau speaks, before fear spikes, before wrestling happens, right, God quietly reminds him, you are surrounded. Right? This is often how God works, right? He reassures you first, he provides reassurance, and then he tests you secondly. Verse 3. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and I've remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I am sending this message to my lord that I may find favor in your eyes." When the messenger returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. Right, so Jacob sends messengers to Esau, right? They return saying Esau is coming with 400 men. Right, Jacob is terrified and divided his people into two groups. Right, Jacob left home running from Esau, but now he must face him. Right, and 400 men, it's not a welcoming committee, right? It looks like a war's brewing, right? Notice something powerful here, that fear doesn't make Jacob run this time, it makes him prepare. Right, before he ran, but now, right, he's built character, God's made him build character, now he prepares, right? Earlier Jacob, he escaped problems. Right, now he confronts them. Right, so growth doesn't just remove the fear factor, right? It changes how you respond to fear. Right? And then he divides the camp, right? That's not lack of faith, that's, prudence, sorry. Right? Faith and planning are not opposites to each other, right? They often work together. Faith comes along with planning, and planning comes along with faith. Verse 9. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, go back to your country and relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." Right, so Jacob prays, he acknowledges God's promises, right, confesses his unworthiness, right, and he asks for deliverance. Right, this is one of the most mature prayers in Genesis, right? Notice three parts, right? He bases his prayer on God's promise, right? That's the first part, right? Second part, he confesses humility, right? He says, I am not worthy, right? And third of all, he states his fear honestly, right? That's real prayer, right? He doesn't pretend courage, oh, I am strong. He tells God, I fear him, right? You got to be honest, right? God is not offended by honesty, right? In fact, God knows your true heart. So if you put this act on like you're courageous, you're potentially lying to him, right? Remember, God is not offended by honesty. And notice how Jacob reminds God of the covenant, right? He's not trying to manipulate God, right? That's just faith talking, right? He's saying, you told me to come back, so I'm standing on your word. Here I am, right? This is no longer, right, the schemer praying. This is the dependent son, right, who was praying to God. Verse 13. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me, and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Who do you belong to, and where are you going, and who owns all these animals in front of you?' then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us.'" He also instructed the second, the third, and all the others who followed the herds, "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say, 'Your servant Jacob is coming behind us.' For he thought, 'I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later when I see him, perhaps he will receive me.' So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp." Right, so Jacob prepares an enormous, multi-stage gift, right? Goats, sheep, camels, cattle, donkeys, right? Spaced out in waves in hopes to soften Esau's anger, right? So Jacob doesn't just pray, he now acts, right? Some people, they pray and they do nothing, right? Some people plan and don't pray. Right, what Jacob does here is he does both. He says, "I will appease him," right? That word means to cover over, right? So Jacob hopes, gifts can cover past offense, right? Spiritually, that word points forward, right, to atonement. Right, but the deeper tension here is Jacob is trying to fix things through gifts, right? What only reconciliation can solve, right? So even though he's been through this whole character transformation, right, he's still learning, right? And God will deal with the root issue later that night, all right? Verse 22. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Right, Jacob sends his family across the river Jabbok. He's left alone, and a man wrestles with him until daybreak. Right, notice this sequence again, right? Angels appear, right? Fear rises. Jacob prays. Jacob plans. Then he's left alone. Right, the real battle here is not Esau, right? It's Jacob's inner life. Right, this wrestling match isn't random, right? God's confronting Jacob here before Esau ever does. Right, Jacob feared an external enemy when God confronts the internal one. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't what's, coming towards you. It's what's still inside you. Right? Verse 24:5. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Right, the man touches Jacob's hip and dislocates it. Right, Jacob clings and refuses to let go without a blessing. Right, if you haven't noticed yet, this man is God, right? So some people say it could be Jesus, right? Jesus is in the Old Testament, right? But this is the turning point, right? God could have crushed Jacob instantly, right? Instead, he just weakens him, right? Strength could wrestle, right? But weakness must cling, right? Jacob shifts from fighting to, holding on, right? And that is spiritual transformation, right? He stops trying to win and he starts asking to be blessed, right? The limp becomes the instrument of change, right? So sometimes God weakens what we rely on, right? So we cling to him instead. Verse 27. The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, Your name will no longer be Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Right? The man asks his name, right? Jacob says, Jacob. He is renamed Israel, right? One who struggles with God and prevails. Right? Jacob means deceiver, right? Israel means prince with God, right? One who prevails with God. But here's the key: Jacob did not prevail over God, right? He prevailed by surrendering, right? He stopped wrestling for control and started clinging independence. Right? For 20 years, Jacob wrestled with people, right? Esau, Isaac, Laban. Now he wrestles with God, right? And that wrestling produces this identity change, right? And real blessing isn't wealth. It's transformation of the heart, right? God does not fix his circumstances first. He fixes Jacob first from within. Verse 29. Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." Alright, so Jacob asked the man's name. He doesn't receive it. Right, he names the place Peniel, which means face of God, because he saw God and lived. Right, Jacob's now realized this wasn't an ordinary man, right? This was a divine encounter, right? Likely a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ, right? He says, "I saw God face to face and lived." Right, that's awe, right? That's mercy, right? And the lesson is clear that God didn't come to destroy him. He came to change him, right? And sometimes the struggle is grace in disguise. Verse 31. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Right, so as the sun rises, Jacob limps. Right, Israel will later commemorate this by avoiding that muscle in animals. Right, and notice the timing. Right, the sun rises, and he limps. Right, serves as kind of a new identity, right, and a permanent reminder. Right, every step for the rest of Jacob's life reminded him of that night. Right, before Jacob walked in, self-reliance. After he walked dependent. Right, he's now dependent. Right, and this limp isn't just a punishment, right, to Jacob, now known as Israel. Right, it was memorial. Right, God left him marked, right, but he's also blessed. Alright, we're going to end it there. That is chapter 32, right, when Jacob wrestles with God. Alright, pretty significant chapter. Next chapter we'll do next video is where Jacob meets Esau. Alright, for now I'm going to finish the video there. Pray that God blesses you guys, protects you, keeps you safe. Hope you have a good rest of your day, week, weekend, whatever it is for you. Whatever, man. Anyway, see you guys next video.